tools are you using, and organize your offering. Because you can do both of those, organize your tech stack and your offering kind of together, and really look to, or you talk about, you can gain so many efficiencies. And then of course that gets you to, as you gain efficiencies, if you haven't already gone to the model of the fixed bill, pricing versus variable pricing or hourly pricing, that creating those efficiencies and creating that focus allows you to be able to do that. And you talk about being profitable. That's the best way to become profitable, and still give your client fair pricing, because fixed pricing is fair pricing.
Welcome to the AI in Accounting podcast, which helps accounting, bookkeeping, and finance professionals prepare for the future of outsourced accounting and accounting technology. Plus, you'll learn how to use artificial intelligence, AI, automation, and machine learning to scale your accounting practice. Now, here's your host, Joshua Feinberg of Vic.ai.
Hi, it's Joshua Feinberg from the AI and Accounting podcast, and I'm being joined today by a very special guest, Tim Sims from WP Edge, based in Texas, all over Texas, Fort Worth, Texas. And Tim is the Accounting Services Senior Manager. Tim, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, Josh.
So the way I usually like to start out with these interviews is to kind of understand your journey. How did you get to where you are career-wise? How is your team built within WP Edge, within Whitley Penn? How do you fit in with your team? Can you just give us a little bit of context on just as a foundation before we roll up our sleeves and talk a little bit more about outsourced accounting?
Well, that's a great question, Josh, and I love to tell that story, and I'll do my best to try to encapsulate it in a decent amount of time here. Started doing small business accounting coming out of a controllership out of the 90s, and started basically I tripped on an account that had this neat tool called QuickBooks, and I started working in QuickBooks, and it became apparent to me right away that was going to be the tool that I was going to build my practice around, and it was cool to get to do that for a number of years on my own as as all the solo practitioners who are listening out there, they'll appreciate doing stuff as easy as you can using technology. And so that was fun to get to do as a solo artist until about 2010, when I ran into a gentleman named Irfan Dasani, and we hooked up and kind of started a firm and began to kind of leverage technology with the few staff members that we had and our clients, and start trying to build something out of this. And technology really helped us. It allowed us to do some things that, quite frankly, small firms weren't doing. Big firms weren't doing for small businesses, and it allowed us to work on some very large accounts all over the world. As a matter of fact, from the little old shop we had in Dallas, and so we. So how we got to Whitley Penn, where we are today, is we merged up with them in 2018. And so we've been with them for 2 years and working to build out their CAS practice, what we call WP Edge, and doing that the same way. We're basically, now we have more people. So now we have more clients, more people to do accounting. And so we're continuing to, basically frame out our tech stack such that it makes sense, both with what our clients are doing, what we need to provide in the service to our client, in addition to what we have in terms of talent on the team. So.
No, that's excellent. So when you were originally building the team, who were kind of the key pieces to ideally have for providing the kind of services you do to your clients?
Well, I think the key members along the way that we tripped on, or we merged with, or whatever we did, that were the best ones, were the ones with the most accounting knowledge. Now, they were not typically the ones that had the most technological knowledge, but they were the most seasoned members, and they had accounting knowledge. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because we're going to talk about a couple things. And one of the areas that was necessary was, it's one thing if the robot's doing something for you, but it's another thing to know what is the ultimate purpose of what that robot is doing. And so having accounting knowledge is obviously first and foremost. in doing that, and then adopting the skill of being able to say, well, if I know what the robot's going to do, if I know what it wants, if I know what is supposed to be said in the financial statements, and then I know how to get it in there, then how can I leverage the technology to just make it easier for me to do that? And so that's where along the way, people still, though technology will help you, you still need to have the accounting based knowledge of, the assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity that never goes away.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. We were doing a breakfast seminar in the fall, and that's specific discussion question came up, as the idea of like, okay, we're hiring interns right out of school, and they're coming out and they totally know the software, but do they really understand enough of the fundamentals of where all this is coming from? So they have the skepticism, the awareness to be able to question, like, is this correct? Does this make sense? Kind of like the old the story of you go into the fast food restaurant and the cash register's down and you give them a 10 and they can't make change from it.
That's a good analogy, Josh. I haven't thought those two together, but that's really good.
But yeah, it's fundamentals of accounting are critical. So what advice would you give to somebody that is brand new to starting an outsourced accounting or CAS practice on best practices when, if this is just kind of the foundational step?
I'd ask them what they're good at. I'd say, when I say what you're good at in terms of accounting, what types of businesses are you comfortable serving? And if there's one or two or three, is there a way to basically focus in on the types of businesses that you're really good at? Because if you can really do good accounting in a specific vertical, whether it be, doctors or lawyers or whatever you're super familiar with, and because some people are good at like manufacturing accounting or understanding inventory and how that stuff moves around, but some people aren't. And so if you can focus on a particular practice, a vertical, I can't say that enough, quite frankly. And we're going to talk about that over and over again I'm sure on the call, but that's one of the first things that I would say is focus on what you're good at. What are you good at?
It's actually really interesting that you bring that up, because in reading through websites of a lot of accounting firms to see how, for starters, it's an education process just to see what real estate the CAS practice gets on the homepage, how easy it is to get to in the navigation, how many different pages. But then it's not only really interesting to see what they call it, there's also, you're right, I've seen a lot of generalists, and then there's people that are running practices or at a senior level in these practices that are specializing in a particular vertical. I imagine that's a big part of the efficiency and success out of the gate.
And I realize, in a bigger firm, you have lots of partners and lots of different kinds of business coming in. But at the end of the day, a lot of times that can be a detriment if you don't have, if you get somewhere and all of a sudden you have all these different, clients, and it takes different skill levels and different expertise, different tools even. And so you might have one or two clients that are in these tools over here, but then you have 20 that are in, a standard kind of situation. And so it really helps to do that. I'm not saying it's easy. And especially when you're starting off, if you're a brand new practice, and if you're small, you want business, right? And so you think, okay, I'm going to get, but you definitely don't want to, well, I guess what you would then do is, okay, don't pick one you're not good at. You know what I mean? So we've serviced them, and I have some other ladies on my team that service them better than me. But me personally, when I was by myself, I don't want to touch inventory. I don't want to touch manufacturing. It's like, no, I don't get that. You know what I mean? it's just something that's not, I'd rather do a service type oriented business or whatever, but it's important to be able to say no to something if you feel like you're going to do it and really bomb out on it. If you're going to do it and learn it and you're very good at doing that, okay, try it. But if you're going to bomb, if you think it's this, you don't want to do something and then fail miserably in front of the client, that's for sure.
So the person setting up to practice should kind of do some introspection, be a little self-aware, look at their resume, look at their LinkedIn, and see the verticals they're at. Do you also feel that that's critical as you're staffing up the team to apply the same lens, or do you feel that it's only vital for the person leading the team to have that vertical experience?
That's a great question. I think we're blessed in right now into being a mode of, if I'm hiring today, I'm looking for specific skill sets. I'm looking for, folks that have had experiences in some of the stuff that we're headed toward. And so if it's strictly data input, when you're hiring the kid out of school and they don't really even know that they're using the accounting equation every day of their life, and you're going to teach it to them in the first place, then I would say, you don't necessarily, that's a different model, right? But if I'm hiring somebody with experience today, I would like relative experience. And so us personally, we'd probably look toward a relative. Did that answer your question? Does that answer your question?
So it's kind of a nice to have, but you can't always hold out to get the perfect match on the candidates you're hiring that have that. Yeah.
And sadly enough, I mean, I'm going to say this, and I could be, a lot of people might be listening to this and go, "Oh, you're wrong, Tim." I might be, but CAS practice experience is not easy to find. It's not as easy to find, it seems, as audit skill practice, tax practice, tax department type stuff. It's CAS department stuff is so far unique to me to other, because frankly the tax and the audit kids and the other groups, they don't even know, they don't do accounting, they don't do a CAS accounting, and so I think it's the field out there is a lot smaller, and it's not. And if you think about it, if you go to college curriculum, they don't teach CAS. It's not. They don't. You know what I'm saying? They're not focused on that. Kids, they're focused on tax department audit kids.
Yeah, no, it's pretty insightful. What I've seen too is a lot of larger firms don't provide it at all, or it doesn't get a lot of visibility. And then even in really small firms that provide it, there seems to be a lot of different definitions of what it actually is, depending on their size and the client size.
And that goes back to the focus. It's usually because we don't have a focus, so we don't really talk about it that much, because it's really not. We just do this here and we do this there, or it's so, the bigger firms are saying it's so disparate that they're like, okay, we don't want to do that. We'd rather focus on the stuff that we can crank out, that bottom line, and that's not a bad. We want to do what we're experts at. That's what I was saying earlier, right? But as far as CAS goes, that's all I've ever done. So I don't know the others.
So I imagine that drives a lot of standardization, which is good for efficiency and profitability. Is it something that you find a lot of CAS clients are asking you about also? Like, hey, Tim, we're thinking WP Edge would be a great solution for us, but we're concerned. Have you ever worked with restaurant chains? Have you ever worked with utility companies? Have you ever worked with law offices? Is that something they're asking about as part of their diligence, or?
The astute business owners do. I mean, you got to think in CAS practice, a lot of times you get business owners that they're just business owners. They don't know what they don't know, in terms of they know their business and they just need accounting help. But for the, being in a larger firm now for a number of years, the clientele that the prospects that we get are typically at a larger size, and of guys that have been there, done that in businesses, and they're redoing businesses, they're redoing things, and they ask those questions, as far as looking for our expertise that we have. Again, being in a larger practice, we're blessed. We got a lot of experience, and so we can answer that question yes to a lot of that. But again, it goes back to, if it's something that I don't think we're going to be good at, or we don't think as a team that we're going to be good at, we will politely say no. We will politely direct them to another firm or to another place that they can go get the expertise that they need, because again, I don't want to fail miserably.
So shifting gears from somebody that's brand new to CAS to somebody that has been in the space 5-10 years or more, what do you think is the most important insight or lesson you've learned over the years that would benefit them as well, that may not be as known as widespread?
If you've been in it the past, okay, so if you've been doing it for 10 years, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, okay, then you've been doing it in about the first 15 years of the concept and I'm not saying it wasn't done back in the past, but it's been the past 20 years since it's really been, 15 especially, the focus of outsourced accounting. So that means you've done it in the beginning. Okay. So if you have, and you're there, if you haven't already done this, what it would be is organize your tech stack. What tools are you using? and organize your offering. Because you can do both of those, organize your tech stack and your offering kind of together, and really look to, or you talk about, you can gain so many efficiencies. And then of course that gets you to, as you gain efficiencies, if you haven't already gone to the model of the fixed bill, pricing versus variable pricing or hourly pricing, if you, that creating those efficiencies and creating that focus allows you to be able to do that. And you talk about being profitable. That's the best way to become profitable, and still give your client fair pricing, because fixed pricing is fair pricing. No matter how efficient you are on the back end, market pricing is market pricing. The product, the service that we're providing our clients is worth something. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so standardization with both the tech stack, standardization with the offering and how you package your services together drives efficiencies, and that's what's allowing you to do fixed pricing, value pricing, as opposed to billing by the hour.
Put a lot in that, didn't I?
So in the details there, what tends to come up that trips people up with figuring out their tech stack? What tends to come up that trips people up with figuring out their offering?
Oh, the client communication and adoption is one of them that happens. That tends to be somewhat challenging if you. Okay, so say you have a client, they've been doing business for a long time, and maybe they've been a client a long time, or they haven't been a client a long time, but they've been doing business a certain way in a certain tool, whatever tool that is. And I don't want to name one because that'd be disingenuous. But say they're on an on-premise tool, and they're trying to get outsourced accounting, right? Well, if they're on an on-prem tool and you're trying to do outsourced accounting, the first thing that's going to come up is, well, how am I going to get access to the data? Am I going to have to come to your office? You know what I mean? Am I going to do the old world thing? And so getting a client to change, being able to convince them that, hey, if you'll help us and we can develop a process and a mechanism for you that's good or better than what you have, and we can provide you a great service at a great price. And hey, guess what? You don't see us that much either. That might be good too for you. If it's convincing the client that's okay. And you would be surprised. Well, accountants aren't particular salespeople. You know what I mean? They aren't forward pushing, people in terms of being able to convince somebody to do something. So that's one of the things they hate to do. Well, the barrier to that sometimes is getting both the people that have the relationship with the client, getting everybody to kind of adopt that, hey, we need to move toward these technologies and stuff. That's been a major component of our growth. And then getting your staff, if you have an older staff, getting that staff to adopt new practices. You know what I mean? Say, hey, we're going to go this way now. We've been doing all these tools and we've got all this stuff going on, but now we're going to go to these more, technologically savvy tools, and we're going to start getting smarter. And that's been those are some of the barriers.
So it sounds like a lot of behavior modification, or the business transformation that people talk about all the time, changing the culture.
Your words, not mine. You said behavior. Sorry. But no, you're right. It is. That's clear. You heard that correct.
I did some interviews in the spring with specialists in Sage Intacct, and what I kept hearing across the board is nobody wanted to give up the spreadsheet. And there was such an enormous opportunity for them to figure out a way to send me a screenshot, send me the spreadsheet, because I'm certain that there's a better way to build it into the dashboards, to build it into the reporting. So,
yeah, that's definite.
Like the old pair of sneakers, nobody wants to give up.
Right. But they're so comfortable still. They have no support, but okay, whatever.
So when you have been taken over new accounts that have come from other firms, do you see any particular mistakes that are being made across the board that are just really cringeworthy, that you're like, oh, here we go again?
Josh, that I would have to go back to what we talked about earlier. and I'm sorry to repeat myself, no new material here yet. The accounting equation never fails. And if it's interesting, sometimes you would be surprised when you take over something from another professional, you're amazed at the lack of understanding of the accounting equation, as it relates to financial statements and the financial statement reporting. That's a big one. It's still a lot of clients that we get still, we get from, it's antiquated software or it's antiquated processes, right? And but often with that comes antiquated processes and then bad accounting, so, but we pride ourselves on fixing that and doing that, and, with as much dignity as possible.
That comes down to better hiring decisions and keeping your technology stack current.
Yeah, and training. We got to make sure our team is accounting savvy. I'm pushing hard, to keep that relevant. I don't want us to just get so used to the robot that we got to understand. We got to understand the reporting and what it's saying. So yeah, definitely. That's the interesting mix that you really have today, is finding that person you can find some, maybe some seasoned people that are really accounting savvy. Man, they've been doing accounting and bookkeeping forever. They know that stuff. They know how to do it. But you put them in front of, an Intact or QuickBooks Online or something, and next thing you know, it's like, what happened? So that's an interesting balance.
So you mentioned something too with training that I'm curious about. What's your take on CPE? Is that something where you think the framework in general fosters the right culture, or people measuring the right tax? How do you approach figuring out the right amount of professional development or the right approach with your team?
Well, that's funny you asked that question. We are working on right now just kind of rolling out some other new platforms in our firm, and it involves a training tool that we've adopted. And I've been impressed, and I just got to say this now. I'm not a CPA. So not being a CPA, I haven't, I've kept up with training by virtue of just being a video game player. I like technology, so I'm going to go learn whatever's new. So that's always been my thing. But the CPAs have to do the CPE, and I'm impressed by the way they seek out, hey, can I get CPE doing that? And they'll learn something new, and they get to do CPE. So we're working with a platform to where we're, and I got off from your question. But we're working with a platform to where we're providing a tool to them, and it has CPE component in there, because we're trying to create a kind of a lifelong learner mentality in our firm, and by doing that promotes that, the CPE ties into that. And did I answer your question, Joshua?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So the final area I wanted to ask you about today is where you see outsourced accounting, where you see client accounting headed in the next 2-3 years or so. Do you think there's any big change that's manifested itself in the last 6 to 12 months that we're going to look back now and be like, yeah, that was the big inflection point?
Well, we're right in the middle of it, aren't we? If you think about COVID and where we all are there's been a push for just some clients that were on the fence about moving to a more technological friendly environment and moving to it. I think that there'll be a turn of accounting departments in certain types of businesses. It's in my opinion, again, I'm an outsourced accounting shop. I've been an outsourced accounting shop for what I say, 15, 18 years now. So obviously I'm biased, but there's no more efficient way to do it than to hire an outsourced accounting shop and get most of the work done efficiently. There may be some operational accounting and some operational stuff that you need inside your business, but so for the profession, I think we're just now getting to the really sweet spot of what's happening with Intact and what's happening with NetSuite. and what's happening with all these fun tools out there and all this AI that we're getting to take advantage of, outsourcing makes a lot of sense, I think, for any business. And that's what we're seeing when prospects that are coming in. I mean, they're like the savvy guys. They're like, oh, I won't do it any other way. They're just emphatic about it. They're just like, oh, I won't do it any other way. I won't do my own accounting department ever, and like they'll have controllers, which is good. We work well with controllers or work well with CFOs. And it's often good to have that internal person to work with us. But at the end of the day, a lot of the legwork that we can do so much more efficiently. I mean, for the profession, I think, the bigger, the bigger boys are going to be in it, and I mean, we're not a small firm by any means, but I think we're top 40. And so it's like, we're all in. I mean, it's going to be, we're purposeful about it. It's fun for us. And we enjoy the client relationships. And so with COVID, it's like everybody's, realizing we got to get to the cloud. We got to do this. We got to do that. We had clients thanking us for, having had moved them to the cloud before. Golly, we're so glad because we'd be just so lost without you, and it's like, that was nice to hear. That's 15 years of work, 18 years of work that we went, okay, good. That's good stuff. I'm glad to hear it. Let's do it for another 20. What do you think?
So it was the big accelerant for anyone that was still on the fence, thinking that cloud wasn't critical, and you think along the same lines that it also, the outsourcing argument is even more strong than ever with the business interruption efficiency.
Yeah. And think about it. Your staff, your staff gets sick. We don't. Our staff gets sick, but we have redundancy. So, in an outsourced model, that's the way it works. So
it's like the sports team. Our hometown baseball team hit 18 of the 30 players on the team got COVID, and then somehow they managed to have a minor league system to bring them up and backfill all of that. And I guess whether it's employees that are going out on vacation, out sick, leaving, churn, what have you, or just protecting against more routine things, hurricanes, earthquakes, fires, floods, all that good stuff.
Selling for me, Josh.
Yeah.
You're making my case, man. No, thank you.
Yeah. So if we think about, if we're to go back and take a snapshot of how a firm like Whitley Penn positions CAS on its website and similar kinds of firms, and look ahead 2, 3, 4 years out, it's entirely possible that you're going to get a lot more visibility in general. These firms are going to realize, one, what we've been seeing for a couple of years, that a lot of firms see it as a really great foot in the door with startups and growing firms to be able to offer more complete services, some even getting into a lot of IT services. But just in general, there's a stronger argument for outsourcing than ever in the past.
And as you said, just to tap onto something you said, there are other things I think that the accounting practices can outsource. And we have a strong technology side of our business. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Strong technology shop in our business for our back office. But there are some things that we're going to be creating internally that ultimately could be used in an outsourced kind of capacity, and that team be used that way. So there's going to be interesting as to what all gets outsourced via an accounting firm, because again, it's a trusted profession. So getting something outsourced from a CPA firm is trusted. It's like what is it? The second trusted to a doctor? I think or is that about right? Bottom line, it's a trusted profession, and so what services can we provide those clients in the future? That will be interesting, and we're already having those conversations, internally.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because that's a little bit more of my background is like a managed services, IT services space, and we've seen for the last several years they're becoming a stronger argument, and it totally makes sense as accounting firms get into consulting on mid-market ERP. That, oh yeah, by the way, we should also talk about your cybersecurity plan. And application development. And then before you know it, you're running IT services. And you're right, there's enormous efficiencies where the sweet spot clients that you want, or for the most part, the same sweet spot clients that a managed service provider wants. So,
Yeah. We'll bookmark this, Joshua, and we'll look back on it a couple of years from now and we'll see if we're right.
see, it's starting because that's another very fragmented space where 80-90% really, really small firms aren't great at scaling process efficiency, sales, marketing. And again, the hardest part is establishing that trusted advisor relationship. Tim, what's the best place for somebody to follow what you're up to on your team, learn more about you, learn more about WP Edge?
You can obviously go to our website, Whitley Penn, whitleypenn.com and wp-edge.com. It's the best way to find us. We're on all the major LinkedIn and Instagram and all of those. So we have we do, there's a podcast that you can find at our website that we've been doing updates with the PPP program, et cetera. So there's many, find us that way, research Whitley Penn and we'll pop up everywhere.
Fantastic. Well, Tim, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the AI and Accounting podcast with me today and share all your lessons learned from 15, 20 years experience in originally growing your own firm that became very CAS-centric and then merging in with Whitley Penn in 2018, and where you see the whole future of outsourced accounting and CAS headed.
Thank you for having me, Josh. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thanks for sharing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the AI in Accounting podcast. To subscribe and leave a review, check us out at blog.vic.ai or wherever you like to consume podcast episodes, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube.